even like Sia, like who did that music video with him.
Oh yeah,
I think he's in the music video for Elastic Hearts. Apparently, she like came out and said how he was just a fucking asshole.
the whole time. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this stuff affects you less if you operate with the assumption that everyone that you see on television or in anything Hollywood is a fucking psycho creep. Like,
Yeah.
if that's just your baseline assumption, this stuff doesn't really. All right. Hey, everybody. It's another episode of The West Loop. I'm one of your hosts, Kale, and here with Cam.
I'm Cam.
That's him. Yeah. Yeah, we're just coming back, following up last week's epi. I don't know. Anything crazy happening in your life the last week?
Not at all.
Yeah,
Pretty uneventful week.
I feel you. The monotony's setting in. Especially, there's a fucking snowstorm outside my window right now.
Yeah, and the weather has been cold and shitty. So
Yeah. I always forget, like, you kind of lead into Christmas and you start thinking, oh, I'm ready for winter to be done. But, like, winter doesn't even fucking start here anymore until, like, February. That's when it gets real.
yeah, like this winter, like I mean, if we don't actually get a crazy February, March, like this winter was so tame.
That was not bad. It is tripping me out, though. Like, something about the wind on the building I'm in is that it's like the snow must be hitting it and going up, but the snow is falling upwards right now. Outside my window. Yeah, it's fucking weird. I'm 100% sober, I swear.
It must be like, is there like a ledge or something there? Like, are you on the top floor?
No, we're like on the second one. I think it's just like because we're at like the bottom of a hill, so I think the wind's just coming down and hitting the building.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Looks pretty fucking cool though, but
Nice.
yeah, let's just kick it off with our 93 to infinity. You know, just going through events that happened in our lives. I don't know. I couldn't find anything big that could fill a whole discussion like last week, but got a few things we could hit.
Sounds good.
I mean, just to carry over the discussion from last week is we just hit, I guess, February 5th was when in 2002, 2003, I want to say, is when Colin Powell showed up to the old fucking UN Security Council and gave his speech that was just like riddled with fucking lies. Yeah, 2003. And essentially, like, he got this report and then they went over it with the State Department people and like they were all like, there's not really any evidence in this, you know, like there was like a bunch of red flags and they just went ahead with it anyway, kind of thing, just to justify it. So that's fun. Just the history of corruption, but
Motherfuckers.
yeah. And then I guess it's funny how, because now when people talk about it, he's like, he's ashamed now and, oh, it's a blot on my record and all this stuff. It's just like, well, you knew before you did it, you motherfucker. But moving past all US bullshit, I did have here, I guess this is apparently in 2004 on the 4th is when Zuckerberg officially launched Facebook. But I think how did that work? Like that you had to be like on a university network or something like that in the early days?
Yeah, from what I remember from the movie, which is a great movie, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's David Fincher, right? Social Network?
I think, yeah, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you had to be like on the network, and it was a very more like a hot or not kind of
yeah.
formatting. It wasn't anything quite like Facebook is now, and yeah, and then eventually, like I think there's a part in the movie where they go beyond just the network of.
Yeah, like I think it was just Harvard, and then it was like just university accounts, and then
then it spread across multiple. I think it was like all the Ivy Leagues at first, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Some elitist bullshit. Yeah, that still fucking blows my mind. I mean, there's those memes of that guy setting up the dominoes. Have you seen those? And it's like there's a meme of a guy like setting a little domino, and then it leads to like larger and larger ones. And I saw something like that, like. some nerd makes a hot or not website, and then the biggest one is just like a genocide in Myanmar, like just like because I think they Facebook I think just admitted responsibility to that. Is that like these psychotic fucking extremists in Myanmar basically used Facebook to organize and execute a fucking genocide?
Yeah. No, it's I don't know. I don't know why I have Facebook to be honest anymore. Like it's fucked. And like looking at like so I've seen quite a few videos on it, and then there was discussions at work about it too. But now there's like this thing where if you go to your settings, you can literally see Facebook just tracks your activity when you're not even using Facebook.
Yeah, they use
So
the
it's just
tracking cookies. Yeah.
yeah. So like there's just like just shit like you can actually look at it. So then people were who like were watching porn and shit, it would track that, and then when Facebook would suggest videos, when you would hit the search bar, people were getting porn all of a sudden showing up on
Oh,
their Facebook.
that's hilarious.
So it's like apparently you can go. There's a way to go turn it off and shit, but it's
That's
just
funny.
like oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, I know when I started using Firefox again, there was something about how it says it like doesn't it like blocks tracking cookies, but who fucking knows how true
Yeah,
that is?
I've downloaded Firefox and I'm slowly transitioning. It's a pain in the ass to transition browsers. I've realized.
Yeah, like all like
Like it's
bookmarks and everything and passwords and
yeah, but I'm gonna start transitioning over because
now I
I want
wonder how good that is though, because like, even they've like opened up. They're like a publicly traded company now, and like it used to be all about open source, but now they're like it seems like they're moving to more corporate
yeah. I'm
bullshit.
sure
So
they're not the best. I just don't like I don't know. Chrome isn't doing it for me anymore.
well, I used to like Chrome because it was so light. But now
Hmm.
it's such a fucking ram hog. It's annoying. It just slows down your shit if you're trying to do other things. But
Yeah. And for me, like I actually quite like Safari, like the Apple browser, but because at work I use Windows computers, I like a browser that I can just have transition between Mac
hmm
and PC.
yeah, I'm still flip flopping between like, do I just give in and use all of the convenience of having shared accounts and having all my shit tracked because it is super nice and convenient, or do I keep being this fucking psycho like luddite, just like using the hardest version of everything for some semblance of privacy, even though they're probably tracking everything anyway.
Yeah, no, I get it.
It's a dilemma in my soul. But so yeah, I mean that's Facebook just starting to kick off. Hasn't quite hit our lives yet by 2004, but one thing I thought saw that was crazy and I think is setting up kind of the world we're going to live into. We wouldn't have remembered this, but I guess on February 10th in 1996, some world chess champion Gary Kasparov lost a game of chess to a computer. And I feel like that's like a harbinger. That's like a fucking indicator of like how much of a role like AI was going to play in our lives and stuff. Like
What year was that? 96?
96. So he lost the first game of a 6 game match against Deep Blue, an IBM computer capable of evaluating 200 million moves per second.
Hmm.
Oh, so he did end up beating it in the match, but it still went to game 5. That's crazy.
Oh, I see. Like just it
So yeah,
one.
he ended up losing once and then 2 ties, but that's fucking crazy, man. I don't know. The fact that that was like felt like a monumental thing in 96 and now it's to the point now where like we have so many little algorithms just processing data and like this machine learning stuff to the point where like even like the leading experts in the field don't really understand how it's happening. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of cool to me.
Yeah, no, it's wild. I mean, it's crazy too like how really 96 isn't that long ago.
No, it's just another testament to that like exponential rate of kind of innovation with technology, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, little did we know this fucking same shit that beating this guy at chess is going to be recommending you porn videos on your fucking Facebook page.
He
Yeah, I don't
didn't
know, and that's not. There's not a lot. I mean, we're kind of heading into like. Do you remember all the Arab Spring stuff that was happening in 2011?
You'll have to refresh my mind. I
It's
don't actually have a
I
clue.
my understanding is not that great either, but kind of in 2011 around this time of year, it looks like February 11th is when fucking President Mubarak resigned in Egypt. But there was just like a huge bunch of like social unrest kind of in like the Arab countries in 2011, all mostly as a result of like Twitter and Facebook actually. Like these people organized these like protests and things like that through social media. And
Oh,
so it was a huge fucking deal because that was kind of the beginning of like people like Jack Dorsey and stuff on Twitter or even Zuckerberg. Like that really lent credence to this whole like technology's disrupting the old order. We're changing the world, you know, things like that. Like we're democratizing information and communication. Because yeah, it was like, oh, look at this. Just the average people can use these tools to organize like a fucking social revolution, right?
right.
And so there was kind of a lot of hope at that time in the sense that like, oh shit, we have the tools to change things now. And I mean, little did we know Mubarak resigned, and then Egypt turned into a fucking military regime, and then the shit in Libya, and I'm pretty sure there's a fucking open air slave market there now. So obviously things did not turn out for the best, but
Yeah.
it is interesting how that was kind of the first like time we felt real political ramifications from these really powerful tools kind of being unleashed, and kind
And
of
now
years
it's
later we'll
gone.
get shit with yeah Trump and Russia and all this shit, but
Yeah, and now I feel like a lot of people are on the opposite side of how social media contributes to the social issues of the world right now
yeah, for
in a
sure.
lot of
Like
ways.
before we were like, I mean, at this time there was a lot of talk about yeah they were gonna like provide the average person with tools to change things, and now it's just become another tool to make sure things don't change. Really,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, because I guess that's kind of the beginning of those conversations, I guess, and it was 2011. We were just kind of fresh out of high. Actually, we were still in high school when this was going down, but it is crazy looking back. I can't believe this was already 10 fucking years ago, but
I know, man. Like that's I still can't believe it. This June will be 10 years since we graduated high school.
right? It's
Like,
fucked.
yeah,
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's things are changing, and I guess it's what's crazy now is that what's nuts to me is how the conversation shifted from here. It's going to bring us together, and now you're right. Like the conversation is more about how it's like separating us and keeping us apart.
yeah,
And I guess it's interesting how all of those developments are almost kind of free of any human interference. Like to bring it back to the AI thing, it's like it's kind of like a self-organizing thing. Like these algorithms are just kind of put in place to like drive engagement and connect people in certain ways, but then they kind of take on a life of their own that nobody really intended or even really forecast.
yeah, man. It's crazy. Like even thinking like one thing like even just like bots and shit through like Reddit and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Like it's just like wow.
the bot stuff, like I don't think they kind of saw that one coming, and even just the way that like they probably never had the intent. They probably just said, okay, here's a thing that will link people to people that think similarly.
Yeah,
But they probably thought that that would just kind of widen networks, but instead it's yeah, it's just kind of shuffled people into these specific little bubbles and camps or echo chambers, as people like to say. And it's
yeah.
interesting how like yeah, like you can have a completely different intent from the actual result that you get.
Well, and I mean that too. Like also just created so much more things. Like I mean, obviously it probably changed like how video games and stuff looked like for sure, right?
Yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, 96 was like I mean there was still significant like video game history by 96, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that like thinking on the chess element like that could just you could play a video game of chess where the computer is that actual computer, right?
Yeah, well, I guess that's the thing is like before AI kind of, if you wanted to call it AI, which it wasn't in video games before then, like your enemies would just kind of go through like a scripted set of
Yeah,
behaviors. And I guess that's all AI really is now. But now this idea that like the NPCs, the non-player characters, never can like learn and react
yeah,
from the player, that's crazy. And that's kind of I guess that's probably the beginning of that. This idea that this computer could like analyze 200 million moves a second or whatever. Like that's
mm-hmm.
much different than just kind of going through a preset. set of behaviors. Actually, I remember. I think it was like NHL like 2007 or something, and I remember how big of a deal it was. They were really pushing their like defense AI because I remember it used to be so easy if you're on a 2-on-1, just throw it over one timer in the net every time, and then it got to
Yeah.
the point where they're like, oh no, it learns from you. And I remember experiencing that playing NHL, and like you'd try a move and it would work, and then you try it again and it wouldn't, and that was fucking crazy. Like,
Yeah, I remember like 05, 06. I think it was 06. It was whatever year they had Divinity Within
oh
Protest the
yeah,
Hero song.
I think that was
Um,
06.
yeah. Um, I literally could do this move where I would pass it to the guy along the boards. He would go all the way down, wrap around the net, and then go in front of the net, and then just fucking top shelf it every single time. It ruined the game in some ways for me because it was just like I could win games like 15-0. Like it was just stupid.
Yeah, it's like only up to you to not
Yeah.
break the game. Yeah,
Oh, I broke the game.
I broke the game. But yeah, no, I guess there's not much of a theme there to that 93 to infinity other than just we have lived through quite a fucking tech revolution a little bit.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. Like to think like we go from that to like having all of that in our phone now with like all these. I mean, Siri, Google, Alexa, shit, right? Like it's just like
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess from like not quite 10 years, but from 96 to 2006 to 2007 ish. The fact that you went from this deep blue IBM's fucking premier computer playing chess to like, okay, now you, yeah, 10 years later, you can download a fucking chess app and
yeah.
then be playing within seconds, right? Like, it's fucking wild.
And then 10 years later from that, all of these devices we've made have their own AI that just listen to you all the time to
Yeah,
just learn about you and help you.
for sure. It's so spooky. Even like things like Gmail when you're writing an email and the suggestions it gives you. Like I'm
Yeah,
sure most of that's from other people writing emails, but when you start to notice it like suggesting things that are pretty like specific to the way you write, it's like
yeah,
fuck out of here.
yeah.
I love it. And I don't know. That's what else happened. Oh yeah, Whitney Houston died in 2012 this week. R.I.P.
Oh shit. R.I.P. Whitney Houston.
Nothing compares to you.
I love. I'm not. I don't know a lot of Whitney Houston. To be
No, me
honest.
either. I just had a buddy
Obviously, I'll
share
know
one
the
of her tunes.
hits,
Yeah.
but I
From what I
couldn't tell you.
understand, that's just a sad ass story too, right? Like
Yeah, the whole.
addiction issues, fucking abusive husband,
Yeah,
tale as old as time. Telling you, man, the entertainment industry just fucking churns through people.
yeah, man.
Either leaves them broken or turns them into a fucking monster, man.
For real though, like you look at most of the greats, a lot of them are dead or have died at a young age.
Yeah.
But do you think that like I don't know, like does that cement them in history by that too? Like it's crazy to think that, but like you think of like someone like who am I thinking? Trying to think of like fucking what's his face? Um, Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, I always wonder how much that like
Like
contributes to their
cause how
legend,
old
really.
was he when he died?
I think he was
He was like
27.
20. Oh, he was that old?
I think so.
But still, man, like that's such a young age. Like, and like even thinking like Tupac and Biggie, like they would still be old dudes, probably occasionally rapping a feature on a song right now.
I
Like
know.
that's
They'd be like fucking Dr. Dre buying
yeah,
fucking headphone brands and shit, right?
yeah,
Well, and that's yeah. I mean, I wonder how much it, because then, I mean, or even people like Kurt Cobain, right? Like,
hmm
other than I guess Dave Grohl being in Foo Fighters, like, I know probably almost like contributes to their like authenticity or integrity, right? That they didn't end up being in one of those many '90s bands that are like playing at
well,
fucking
yeah, and
average
sell out.
Joe's in Lethbridge, right? Like just
Yeah,
like just grinding it out, just holding on to that last shred of fame, like.
yeah. No, like like I'm not saying it's a good thing by any means, but I think anyone gets sick after like something's gone on for too long in some ways, unless they're able to perfect it for like all the time, which
Like continue
very
evolving, right?
very yeah, very few musicians I find can do that. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty rare.
and the ones that can, they have a formula where it's just like they don't. I think unfortunately now we live in a time where, as much as it's awesome that you have things like SoundCloud and YouTube and all the streaming services and people can just drop music, but I think it also takes away from the appreciation to like getting something quite limited and not like all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it just kind of like I guess just like when there's that much choice, both things get lost in the shuffle, and also yeah, like you don't really sit with something long enough for it to have as much of an effect because you got more
Mm-hmm.
stuff to get to all the time, right?
Like obviously I'm biased on this, but I think like to me that's also one of the reasons like why I love like someone like Frank Ocean is like the guy like I love the guy and he's released fucking 3 albums in my time of even liking him. Like
Yeah.
it's just like he makes his fans like wait and he puts in the work. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like as much as all these tools are fantastic to just be able to push out music all the time, and I feel like that's kind of like the pressure in the industry now is to stay relevant, and so I get why that's there, but it also takes away from it because like chances are if you're pushing out music like crazy, you're gonna release a decent amount of duds.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and that's what I was gonna say. Specifically, especially with rap, there is like this pressure to always be putting shit out to like stay relevant. It's like part of that like marketing hype machine, right? And
Yeah,
again, trying to make money on this shit is what fucking gets in the way of the actual art. But
yeah, that's unfortunate,
yeah,
but it's and I think that's what's fascinating too for those ones that manage to not like they don't like even someone like Frank Ocean like he's arguably pretty damn big. Like I think a lot of people don't know who he is,
mm-hmm.
but there is a very like cult following. I mean, the guy was
Yeah,
supposed to headline Coachella, so like I mean that I think right there is big enough, and
exactly.
like he's managed to I don't know like cheat the system in the sense that like he isn't one of those people, but he's still huge
Yeah,
in his own way. I don't know how he did it. Like obviously his talent helped, but like
he was also kind of like I think he got big on like Tumblr and stuff. Like he like used the grassroots like model of like just finding fans online.
yeah.
But right before it like blew up and all of a sudden everybody was making music online, like he was kind of he got it in there just before it kind of exploded and everybody was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a little
It's
bit.
interesting too because like this is going to be controversial, and I don't mean it in the sense of quality, but like even someone like Kanye, like he like kind of perfected like this. He doesn't milk like he doesn't put out shit all the time. He hypes up these albums for
Yeah.
months on end.
Yeah.
And yes, he's finally at a point now where he is a lot of the time. It's kind of pretty garbage, in my
Yeah.
opinion, my personal opinion. But like, I mean, the guy also has like an insane cult following, and then I mean now he doesn't even need his music. Like he's just
Yeah.
being able to capitalize on so many other things.
He can sell his white t-shirts for what, like $200 or whatever? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's got an empire now. I guess that is kind of like I guess in the same way that like Frank is still big and he has that dedicated following, I guess that's kind of the trade-off you have. You either play that hype relevancy game and you're just kind of always kind of like skipping along the top of the wave always, or you just yeah you kind of make a bet. You either try to play that game so that you're always getting kind of like whoever's around, kind of like just whoever's getting that, whoever you're capturing the attention through like advertising, marketing, and stuff like that, or you have the dedicated base that just follows you. I feel like
Well,
you kind of have to play one or the other.
and that's what's interesting. Like I know that you won't be too familiar with this, but like what I find interesting with the rap game and like with the music and stuff like that is like you have like your Frank Oceans, your Kendrick Lamars, your even like Tyler the Creators, like those kind of guys, um, who put out like projects, like good albums. They stay relevant. They could headline festivals. Like they're generally always good music. And then, but then you have like this, like with the whole SoundCloud thing and like the rapping, you get arguably rappers who come up and like they're the number one rapper at the
Yeah.
time. Like I'm thinking of someone like this year, like fucking like the baby has been featured on almost every song that's like on the charts, and he's number one, and he's put out so much fucking music. But the
Hmm.
thing is with those guys, they do that and they're like that for like a year. They take over for a year, and then
And then they burn out,
they
right?
burn out. Like think of like fucking the horse kid, like
Oh yeah, Lil Nas X or whatever.
yeah, Lil Nas X. Like he was huge. He was on quite a few songs, and then boom, just died off.
Yeah.
Like so many of these rappers are like that. But then for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's quality over quantity or what you would argue it is, but there's just these guys and they cement their legacies by a few albums, and it doesn't matter. Like I mean, think of how long it's been since Damn. Like we're looking at like 3 years now, at
Oh
least
shit.
two. At least 2 years since Damn. No, yeah, 3 years I think
At
since
least,
Damn,
yeah.
and that's the last album we've seen from Kendrick, and he's still arguably one of the biggest guys. I mean, in rap still,
Mm-hmm.
right? Someone
Well,
like
yeah.
J Cole, even like
Yeah. Well, I think that's like those guys, but those guys have been grinding forever, right? Whereas those other guys kind of just rocket to the top, and I think that's the difference. You either grind it out, slowly build that dedicated base, or you play the meme game. Because even that little Nas X guy, like I'm pretty sure he was like just like a big meme account on Twitter for a
yeah,
long time. Like he was just like popular by just stealing other people's memes, and then all of a sudden kind of just transitions that into like a little short-lived musical fame.
yeah,
But I think that's the difference. You're either like kind of like engaging with like the music and music fans and slowly grinding that out, or you're just capitalizing on this like short attention span meme cycle. And you'll get a bigger payoff, but yeah, you're gonna get dropped right away as everybody moves on to the next big thing.
yeah. No, it's just interesting how it works like that. Like because it can't be quality over quantity either. Because like someone like Post Malone, I would never argue, like as much as I don't mind his music and I think he's an interesting dude. It's not very quality all the
Yeah, I
time,
know.
but yeah, he's been fucking relevant for now quite a while, and he's pushed
Hmm.
out 2, 3 albums, and they're always top of the charts. Like
Yeah, I feel
yeah,
like he might have been like a prototype, like an early version of that kind of meme rapper, that meme cycle thing. Because a lot of his early thing was like, "What the? Look at this fucking weirdo," you know? Like I feel like a lot of it was like kind
yeah.
of that novelty thing, but because he was one of the first, I think maybe he might have kind of
Well,
got a
and he
little more
called,
staying power.
and I think the big thing with him too is he kind of not, not that he created his own genre, but there was an element where it's in its own realm. Like it had that like this punky attitude to it, where it was like not just rap. It had the
Yeah,
rock elements to it, but yeah,
a little
no,
bit. Yeah,
it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. That was a random ass
yeah,
tangent
no, I
about
like it. Yeah,
music, but
just the ways tech and fucking social media's warped all of our culture,
yeah.
for sure. I don't know. Maybe we'll take a little breaky poo here then and come back for some dumbest Burton and some current events shit.
All right, sounds good.
Cool, cool. Back in a bit, guys.
Welcome back there, folks. Let's get into the cream of the crop,
Yes,
dumbest Burton of the week.
the shit rises to the top.
Um, yeah, why don't you tell us who this guy is?
So this is yeah. For our dumbest Burton of the week, I had to go with this guy just because we got some news about this report that he's responsible for. So there's this guy named Steve Allen. He's some commissioner. He's been put in charge of this report that the Alberta government wants done on whether there is a foreign funded network campaign to discredit Alberta oil and landlock it. So like it's playing into this whole weird conspiracy they have that there's like basically any climate advocacy or any environmental concerns within Alberta aren't real Albertan concerns. It's actually the result of this foreign funded information campaign that there's people being paid off by people outside of Canada to make Alberta oil look bad. So Yeah,
What
so
the fuck?
yeah, dude, it's wild. It goes crazy. I mean, that's pretty much why they did that whole energy war room, the Canadian Energy Center that spent like 30 million of our fucking dollars to just have a really shitty website and some pretty bad like ad campaigns.
Oh my god.
They're the one they got in trouble because they came out with this logo for it, and then they got in shit because they basically just stole the logo from some other company and just made it their own. Like,
Of course.
it's fucking absurd. But anyway, yeah, they gave this guy fucking like $2.5 million to conduct this massive report on this fucking uh into whether foreign money is bankrolling campaigns to besmirch the reputation of Alberta oil and gas products. So his deadline was the end of January, and they just like last minute, last Friday, put in like an order to extend it. Now he has till the end of May 2021 to complete this report. But this guy is like just like a shitty student that like can't finish his homework. Like this is I don't know how many times. Yeah, a third deadline extension. So this is the third time it's been extended, and they also gave him an additional $1 million. So now it's up to $3.5 million in taxpayer money to pay this guy to look into some conspiracy theory that's not even there. So this fucking moron, he almost shouldn't get dumbest Burton of the week because he's like kind of smart and then he's just leeching money from us to do
Yeah, I feel
nothing.
like whoever made the decision to give him the $3.5 million should be the dumbest burden of the
Yeah.
week. But
So that'd
yeah,
just be Alberta cabinet, but yeah,
yeah.
fuck this guy. I can't. Yeah, Energy Minister Sonia Savage said in a statement that they're granting him an additional 4 months to ensure that he's able to complete a comprehensive investigation into a possible well-funded foreign campaign aimed at discrediting the province's energy sector. So yeah, it's just all a fucking grift, and I don't know if this guy's a true believer or not, but just seeing his fucking smug, gross ass face made me want to give him fucking dumbest Burton of the week. So there you go, Steve Allen.
Steve Allen. I love the name though.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Steve.
Allen. But yeah, this guy sounds like an idiot. I mean, the project sounds stupid,
It's pretty it's pretty stupid, yeah. But
and you gotta love the fact that our tax dollars are paying for him to do this.
for this fucking garbage, right? Like, how much money did they even save by cutting AISH or like removing it from being tied to inflation? Like, it couldn't have been more than the money they're fucking wasting on this bullshit. Like, it just infuriates me that
Yeah,
like it's not even like my life has not changed that much to tell you the truth. Like, I'm lucky in that none of these cuts have hit me or anything like that. But it makes me mad that there's like worse off people in this province that are like suffering more
totally.
because of these fucking decisions. And it's all for bullshit. Like, it's not even like they're like even doing anything like cool. Like, they're not even like building like some fucked up like weird psycho castle or something. Like, they're not even being like coolly corrupt with it. They're just like giving it to their dumbass friends and making a few oil tycoons that much richer. It's garbage. But on the topic of that fucking this oil bullshit, like, this is so emblematic of the kind of problems we're having in Alberta. And so just to like as far as current events go, yeah, this guy's extended his fucking little inquiry into evil eco terrorists. But this is kind of coming off the heels of fucking Joe Biden announced he's going to cancel Keystone XL. So I just wanted to talk about like pipelines and just Alberta oil in general, basically. Like, using this guy, he's a perfect little mascot of the fucking corruption and money behind that industry in this province. And I don't know. I kind of want to just get your take on it, like, because I've been like psychotically obsessed with this stuff and trying to like learn what's actually going on. But like, what's your impression of like Alberta oil? I mean, we get told from day one that it's very important and all this shit and drives
Yeah,
our economy, but
I guess my and this is like a pretty naive. Like I don't know much about it, so um, without knowing anything, my kind of point of view has always been the standpoint of I understand that we are an oil province. We make money off the province, and it's not something that we can just say see you later and just leave tomorrow. But I've always been a priority of supporting people and supporting the idea that we need to slowly move away from that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as much as um, pipelines like are important to that industry, and I get that and I understand that. I just think that we like a pipeline is something that we need to move away from, and you hear all the time about fucking leaks and fucking
Yeah.
where it's just damaging fucking lakes and rivers and fucking ecosystems with animals, and you know that shit's happening all the fucking time. And it's kind of at the point where to me like Earth is priority one here before everything else. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm just like done when it comes to the idea of supporting anything with that area. Like I get it, it's not something that we can just it can just disappear. I understand that. And like when you talk to people that are big supporters of the oil and stuff, that's usually the first thing is like, well, how do you think you get your phone? Like, how do you think you get your TV? Like, how do you think you get your laptop? It's like,
Yeah.
I get it. Like, I understand it's not something that we can just disappear from, but it needs to be priority one that we're slowly working away for that. And I feel like a pipeline at this point just isn't really doing that. So
Exactly.
that's my standpoint. It's been my standpoint for years now.
No, for sure. And like that's kind of what we get taught growing up in Alberta, for sure.
Yeah,
And so many of those things that we just take as like common truths, common sense kind of thing that I've only recently learned a lot of it is kind of mostly bullshit. Like, first of all, that fucking argument that drives me absolutely up the fucking pole in the sense like, well, oils and everything. Well, how are you gonna you use that? You use that, and it's just like you're literally making my point for me. How fucked up is it that I cannot do anything that doesn't involve fossil fuels and oil? Like that's the point. We are too dependent on this shit. This shit infects too much of our lives. Like this idea that like it's like that one comic with that poor serf like hauling sticks that's like we should improve society somewhat, and then that dude pops out of the well like, oh, but you participate in society, curious, I'm very intelligent. It's just like
yeah,
it's just like I don't have a fucking choice, dude. What am I supposed to do? Like I literally need a car to get to work because our entire urban planning is designed around the idea that almost everybody has a car. Like that's the problem. It's not you're just repeating the problem back at me and like play, propping it up like it's a gotcha. It's like no,
yeah,
you're just proving my fucking point for me. We're too dependent on this shit. And so yeah, and I mean even as like as someone who would like kind of argue against ideas of like cutting education and cutting healthcare, and then when you advocate for like not going forward with new fossil fuel projects, they kind of throw that at you too. Like, well, where do you think the money comes from those programs? And that's kind of like how you said there that like we're an oil province and that's like kind of what we rely on. I'm kind of finding even that's not really so much true. Like we hardly take any money. The government hardly takes in any money from these fucking oil companies. I think the one thing I found is like um it was something like I think Alberta only takes in like yeah, here it is. In 2017, the province was paid 4.5% of the oil's value in royalties. And even when you combine all the taxes and other fees, like corporate taxes from these oil companies, it's still only been 6% of revenue. So there's a shit ton of money being made on the resources in this province. And the people of the province are seeing none, like almost none of that money.
right.
Only 6% of the total revenue. And so that kind of is bullshit then. This idea that if the oil economy does better, then everybody in Alberta does better. It's not really true. We hardly see any of that money. It mostly just goes to like American oil companies. And so it's just there's so many of those things that yeah, it just seems like common sense because that's the way we're taught. And then when you dig into it a little further, it's not even true. Like even this idea that like Alberta oil is like an engine for Canada's economy is something we hear a lot of the time. Like this is something not just Albertans should care about, but all Canadians. And even that, I think oil and gas is only like 7% of Canada's economy total. It employs less than like 200,000 Canadians. It's like around
Really?
1% of the population works in oil and gas. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, like this idea that it's this huge part of the sector and it's really important to the economy, it's mostly bullshit.
Sounds like it. Yeah. That's
And
fucked.
so yeah, that it's just stuff like that like you never hear this stuff until you like I had to spend time digging around looking at fucking numbers on like Stats Canada and stuff to get this, but like the narrative we're spoon fed as Albertans in Alberta is honestly mostly founded on lies. Like it drives me nuts. So like even during this US election, that's what it all became about was fucking pipelines.
Oh yeah. I literally like the first negative thing you hear anyone talk about Biden around our area of the woods was just that it would be terrible to the Alberta economy because he's against the pipeline.
The Keystone XL pipeline. Yeah. Yeah. And from what I understand too, Keystone, again, all that is doing is because we don't really have refining capacity for Alberta bitumen. It's a really low grade, really shitty oil. And so I think we might like I think we upgrade about 30% of it to synthetic crude here before we ship it off to be sold. But the bulk of it just gets shipped to American refineries to be upgraded into a better product and then sold usually to places outside America. So this idea that like the US is our number one customer, well kind of, not really, they're like our number one customer to buy our really shitty raw product at a cheap price and then upgrade it and then they profit off of it. So
Right.
even building this pipeline, it's not even really going to help even Canadian companies, let alone the average Canadian citizen. So
And what's funny too is like I get, yeah, it's sad that the lies are just spread like that because if anyone's being benefited from the pipeline more so it's the Americans than the Canadians by
yeah,
the sounds of
100%.
it, right? So it's just like if they're the ones fighting against it, why shouldn't we? Like I mean, you have Kenny who I mean is heartbroken over this.
Yeah.
And who knows? Like I don't know Kenny like on his like personal views on oil. I'm assuming he being conservative, he's a huge oil thing, but I know the biggest motivating factor would be that he would let down a lot of supporters by not pushing for oil, right?
Yeah.
And then I mean, and then you have our federal standpoint where Mr. fucking Trudeau decided to be against the pipeline his entire running until he got into office, and then all of a sudden he changed his mind and decided that that's when he was gonna try and bring some right votes over by
Mhm.
saying he'd support it. And
Again,
now,
this like liberal pandering to the right.
yeah,
They're never going to vote for you, bro. Like
yeah,
yeah, and actually funny about the cuz he bought the Trans Mountain expansion. And so so much of that again, we always get this rhetoric about jobs too. And that's the thing. I want the average Albertan to have a well-paying job.
yeah,
But even specifically with Trans Mountain expansion, when Trudeau bought that, that was his justification, right? Oh, it's going to be an economic stimulus. We're going to give so many Canadians so many jobs. Apparently, when Trans Mountain or when Trans Canada sold it to him, it was in the like evaluation that like actually you're probably only going to get about 90 permanent jobs out of this.
yeah.
90.
And how much
4.5
money?
billion fucking
Yeah,
dollars of
yeah,
Canadian taxpayer money to get 90 permanent jobs.
yeah,
So it's like it's such a fucking joke. He's obviously just I mean, that's the thing. These oil companies, they donate to both parties, you know, like everybody's in their fucking pocket. It's not just like a conservative versus like they're a huge force that needs to be
yeah.
reckoned with. I mean, you see Rachel Notley get in here. She's just as beholden to those forces too. She was fighting about Trans Mountain for she basically pressured Trudeau into doing that, into buying that pipeline.
Right.
And how much good did that do her? Does the average oil worker in Alberta think she's the oil candidate?
Yeah. No.
No. So it's all such a fucking sad joke. And that's the thing. They keep saying it's going to be jobs, but even with this Keystone XL, because it's transporting things to be refined, the more we do that, the more refining jobs get lost up here in Canada. And I found this one quote. I think it was in an opinion piece on the Tyee that every time Canada exports 400,000 barrels of raw bitumen, economists calculate that the nation sends approximately 18,000 upgrading and refining jobs abroad. So for the more oil we ship down there, there's less jobs up here. And
Right.
It's just something because like I hate how it gets framed. As soon as I start bitching about Alberta oil, the average Albertan dude, especially somebody employed in that, thinks I'm attacking them or their profession, and that's really not it. Like I want, like, you probably have skills that are vital to society as a whole. Like I want you to have a well-paying job. That's not the thing. It's just
Yeah. Totally.
this
Yeah.
is the worst oil on the planet, and we're already roasting the planet to death. So maybe we should leave it in the fucking ground.
Yeah. If someone could tell me that helping people with addiction is bullshit and make sense of that, then I'm not going to take that personally that I do that as my job. Like
Yeah,
it's
right.
just
Like
like, oh, I mean, if you got proven scientific fact that this is all a farce, then absolutely.
then
But
yeah, I'll rethink my position, but I'm not gonna take it personally, right? Like
exactly, like the fact of the matter is, I know it's true, and what I find fascinating is I guess it's the naiveness of those and the people, and it goes back to this similar theme of like educating yourself, and it's just like these people don't care about that, and clearly it shows. Like I've always had this thing with not all those people, like, because I you can't just categorize them. They're all individuals,
no, everybody has wildly different
but
political
just
views.
knowing the industry that they're going into, and then you have this idea that like so many of them know it's a up and down industry, and yet they make shit tons of money and they blow it all on the biggest truck, the best toys, and then they're the one bitching at our government when they get laid off. Like it's just it's this cycle that's constantly happened. I've seen it multiple times in our lifetime, and it's just so infuriating to me that like,
Yeah,
and I find not all the time, but that is a big deal and a big supporting factor in how the next election gets taken place is kind of on how
where
those
oil's at.
people, yeah.
Well, and that's what drives me nuts is because like I honestly I just want to push back on some of it just because like I think that's what really turns all these people off is that kind of like patronizing, like you need to educate yourself, because as far as they're concerned, they do educate themselves. They go read lots of things in the newspaper about oil. But like there's things like Post Media owns pretty much every fucking newspaper in this country and pretty much every fucking news station. So like
Yeah.
they're gonna get a certain narrative, the narrative that we were just kind of going through at the beginning about how it's like kind of necessary and the yada yada. It's like even the like center, not super pro oil media is still pretty pro oil around here, even if it is trying to be the more like measured approach. And it's mostly bullshit. And that's what like I just wish we just kind of need to like reframe this stuff for these guys because like I don't know, just by telling people that like educating themselves is like to say that there's like one right way to think about things, and I'm kind of learning that that's not really so much true, and
Right.
we're more so like kind of just a result of our surroundings, and it's less so a personal failing on their part to like expose themselves to the right information, and more so like a failure on the part of the infrastructure in place to educate people that like failed these people, not so much that they failed by not educating themselves. And so I find like I don't know, just giving them different ways to think about it rather than telling them that they're wrong. I mean, I understand it's so difficult when someone's telling you climate change isn't real. It's fucking really frustrating. And I think at that point they're just a lost cause, which is kind of sad to admit. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is just like reframe it. Like, don't be mad at the government. Be mad at the fucking oil company that laid you off just because they couldn't quite make as much profit because the oil price went down. Like, fuck them. Be mad
Yeah.
at them. They're still pulling in profit and they laid you off. Like, that's what you should be angry about, not the fact that we didn't force through another pipeline we don't need.
And the fact that the company generally that you're working for, chances are the higher ups of that company are still millionaires. Like,
Making bank.
yeah.
Paying out their shareholders too. People that are investing in the company, doing none of the work that you do, they still get to take a check home and then you got laid off. Like, you should be fucking angry about that and that system. And how these people just treat you as disposable.
Hmm.
That's disgusting. And like, yeah, I mean, I understand. Yeah, you should probably have better financial planning and like not spend money on toys. But that's the thing. People get a job and you just like this whole thing is to just set up to like assume that you're going to keep making the same amount of money and live within that lifestyle. So it's not so that's it's kind of just what they're taught, you know? Like I don't
Yeah. No, I don't necessarily blame them themselves. Like I don't know if is it a too high paying of a job. Like you're gonna have those blue collar people that are interested in that line of work.
mm-hmm.
Either
Cuz who
way,
wouldn't
I'm
want to
not.
make Yeah.
Not, I'm not saying like, oh, if it's a minimum wage job, yeah, obviously it shouldn't be a minimum wage job, but there's something wrong when it comes to like that shit happening.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, who wouldn't want to make six figures out of high school? Fuck
Yeah,
yeah. Everybody would want to do that, and that's the thing. I don't know if like shaming them for like well you got that without any education, like, well, it's like no, that everybody should be able to have that, in the same way that like they bitch about like government workers that have better paying jobs because of unions and stuff. It's not so much then they like almost vindictively want to see healthcare cut. It's just like no, it's not that like these people have too much. It's that like we should all have more. Like these fucking
yeah.
executives and shit raking in money, like they got us fighting against each other, and they're the ones laughing all the way to the bank, no matter who's in power. So, I just really wish we could change people's kind of like us versus them mentality, because it doesn't make sense.
No, because you're right. Like we should all be on the same page. Like
Yeah, we
it's
should all
not.
be making more, not me versus you.
Yeah.
Because that is
Yeah.
what's interesting, I guess, is like a little bit of the history of like the oil patch. Is that like in the 80s and 90s, I think it was with Lockheed, like they like the oil sands was nowhere near to what it is now. And so from what I understand is that they put in really low royalty rates and a lot of like bomb ass subsidies for these companies to come in and develop these projects, which are super capital intensive. Like you need to put a lot of money up front before you ever start seeing a return, because it is so energy intensive to extract this shit. And so that was kind of like the game plan of the government, was like, okay, give these guys like a break up front, and then we can kind of start pulling in money. And whether they ever were planning on that, who knows? But basically what happened was is that, yeah, you had this huge bubble all of a sudden. Once they kind of like recouped their costs, mostly due to the help of subsidies and tax cuts and things like that and low royalties. But all of a sudden now they had these fucking projects that were just raking in money, that as long as oil was at above $100 a barrel and their operating costs were kind of covered by like government subsidy, these companies were just rolling in money. And so, yeah, they had no problem bringing dudes on making 120K a year with no prior training. Like it was sweet for a while there, but that's what kind of sucks, is that like that boom has happened. Those projects are already in place. It's not like we can just cut taxes again and then they can come in and set up again. They're already set up. So the
Right.
bubble's done. It's over. And that's what kind of sucks, is that these oil companies keep lying and saying, well, if only the government did more, we could have that again. But it's like, no, that's over. They just keep saying that to get your support so that they can keep making the money while they don't hire you because they've automated away all of your jobs, and like there's just less, like the capacity's up but the amount of people they need is less. So it's like they just don't even have the jobs to go around anymore. But they
Well,
keep selling that fantasy.
and that's what's interesting too is like that's the biggest thing is everyone wants to go back to what it was like, but anything I've read has basically stated that that will never happen again.
Never.
So where's this rationale? Like, I just don't understand why people. And I guess it comes down to where you get the information and
Yeah.
who's paying that source, right? Like you're right. Like you mentioned it earlier, and
And if you don't dig any deeper than like your CBCs and your CTV and your fucking Post Media, Calgary Herald, Edmonton Journal shit,
yeah,
they're all gonna parrot, if not an overtly like right wing UCP fucking petro nationalist, oil is great, oil's what makes us Albertans and we need to defend it with our lives. You're either gonna get that, or you're gonna get, well, it's bad but it's necessary, and both of those are not true. Like,
yeah,
so it is frustrating, because then when you say that, when you come in saying both sides are wrong, you look like a crazy person, because it's like you're denying reality, when in fact it is not reality. And yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
It's really
It's fucked,
frustrating.
man. It
And
is.
so, yeah, and I just wish you could have these conversations without people taking it as an attack, because it makes me sad to see there is lots of families that are struggling in the wake of this oil crash. You've had people that are used to a certain standard of living, and then because of like predatory loaning practices and things like that, they're having a rough fucking time now. And I wish I could say like in the same breath, like, that sucks, and I don't want you to be going through that. But also, you can't go back to the way it was. Like, that is a
Yeah,
bitter pill for people to swallow. And I understand why they'd rather believe some conspiracy theory that actually environmentalists are actually really rich, and they're paying for a misinformation campaign rather than it's the oil companies paying for the misinformation. Like,
I just, yeah, I don't know. I have a tough time with that, with like rationalizing that, because it's just like it doesn't make any fucking sense why someone would do that. Like, just, I guess, God forbid, the industry that you've grown to love and pay your bills from is a farce. Like, I guess, like, I get, I'm sure that's hard to understand, but the fact of the matter is it's like that's what it is. Like, and I don't know why you would think someone would just make this shit up.
mm-hmm. Well, I think that was kind of the goal of this, like, weird, like, tying oil to an Albertan identity. I think that's like why it was really effective, because rather than just like you're a person who works hard and that makes you a good person that provides for your family, it turned into like you're an oil worker and that's what makes you a real Albertan, and that's what makes you like a good person because you work in this really tough field that everybody hates, but you're like a martyr for doing it, right? And
Yeah,
so it does become part of their personal identity rather than the reality for most of us, which is I'll just take whatever job kind of comes my way that I have some skill in, and I have a job to live my actual life rather than my job is my identity,
yeah,
which I don't know. It kind of falls into that culture war shit, because then it's really effective for that side, because then now rather than having a sober conversation about facts, it becomes like a personal battle between wills.
yeah.
I don't
It's
know.
unfortunate, and like we could argue, like not argue, but like talk about it forever,
Mm-hmm.
because it's trying to understand a viewpoint that we'll never understand.
No, I mean I can kind of understand it. I don't understand how you can like. I mean, it's just classic things like cognitive bias and stuff like that, right? Like we all suffer from it. Like even when I see things like about how like for green energy, it's not quite where people say it's at. Like it is not this cure all that we people say it
Yeah,
is. Like there's still many issues with it, and I used to kind of like push back on that stuff, like it's just propaganda, you know. Whereas now it's like no, okay, I can still advocate for these things while recognizing its shortcomings. You know,
right.
like having a nuanced approach to things, which is just impossible for so many people because it takes admitting that you were wrong, which a lot of people don't want to do.
No, no, we've talked about that before.
Yeah,
Not many people like to.
especially when you've based your whole identity around like I'm an oil worker, I vote UCP, I am a real Albertan, and I provide for my family. Like when everything is built on that, when you do come across information that puts that in jeopardy, it is just a human trait to just reject that information essentially as false. No, not true.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how much you tell them it's scientific consensus.
Yeah.
What has science gotten them? I mean, they didn't need it to get their job, right? Like, I don't know.
Well, it seems like the go-to thing on their part is this is just a cycle. Like this happens on Earth all the time. Like we just go through
Oh, for the
cycles.
climate change shit, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the climate denial stuff is so out to lunch. Like it's I can't you can't engage with people that are there, really, because that is kind of what this whole thing hinges on, right? Like if it wasn't for climate change and like environmental degradation, that is kind of the impetus for needing to get off of oil. And so if they just outright reject that, which is like that's essentially saying the Earth is flat,
Yeah.
you're done. You're too far gone. You can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
At that point, you got to like start reading about how to like break people out of cults.
Well, it's tough, right? Because like it's like this idea that like you're right and you were wrong. It's just not there anymore, unfortunately, because like every one of those people would listen to us talk,
Yeah.
and they would think the exact same thing we're thinking about them.
Yeah, I
And
know
like
exactly. That's what I mean.
even as something as absurd as like the flat Earth movement, which is just fucking crazy
Yeah.
to 99.8% of the people, but this point percentage of people that actually believe in it, I mean, it's wild.
And yeah, I think it is symptomatic of just there's been a concerted effort to have everybody as confused and fucking lost as possible for a long time now. Like, it makes us good, scared little consumers, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is just a result of people feeling really alone and scared and just kind of latching on to any narrative that makes them feel like they've got it figured out. I mean, we all fall guilty
Yeah.
of that, but
I mean, in some ways, I feel like that's where a lot of the basis of even religion is.
well, yeah, yeah,
Is
for sure.
yeah.
At least modern shit for sure. And yeah, it's just I think it comes down to it's not I'm right, you're wrong. We're all wrong. Everybody's wrong. Nobody fucking knows anything
Yeah.
for sure. Like we're always constantly learning new shit, and they always throw that back as like, well, climate science said this 10 years ago, and it's like, yeah, you're right, they were wrong. It's actually worse than they expected, but it's so. I think by trying to preach this stuff as like facts, and you're wrong, you just need to educate yourself and read the right things. That's never gonna work because that's like presupposing I'm right, and then you just get that superiority thing that nobody
Yeah.
responds to well. But rather than we're all idiots, we're all wrong, here's what I think and here's why I think it, rather than you need to think like me. I think that's why like kind of attacking people online, I think specifically online stuff doesn't help. Because why would I listen to some random stranger yelling at me on Twitter? I'm never gonna do that. I'm never gonna change my view because someone's calling me an idiot. That's never gonna happen. But I think by having these tough conversations with people in your life that have like some reason to hear you out, I think that's the only way we're gonna like overcome this. As annoying as that is, and as much as I don't want to do it, I think by like you have to have that like basic human connection first before people will hear you out. So it's like arguing with strangers online is never going to solve anything. I think it's going to come to like having these difficult conversations with family and friends and stuff. And
Yeah. Like I agree. Like I don't really see anything changing it until it's what's gonna have to happen, and even at that, like, it, like on this standpoint of like climate change, something crazy is gonna have to happen. But what's wild is even that I you could there'll still be a good chunk of people that are gonna continue to believe.
yeah, well, that's the thing is that stuff, crazy stuff is happening. Like the climate change isn't coming; it's here. It's happening. You
Well,
know?
and I think what's funny, and then this is what's interesting too, because those same oil and gas people, I mean, and this is kind of what I mean with something needs to happen, is you take something like fracking, for example, that had
Terrifying.
immediate effects.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of those people realized that.
yeah. Specifically in like
Because,
Pennsylvania and stuff, I think a lot of people did wake the fuck up.
and so, like, to me, you had an immediate reaction to prove to you that, okay, yes, this is fucked up with
Yeah,
fracking. And unfortunately, with the climate change, as much as some people do see it, yes, maybe it's not right putting your face as the fucking ground below you is shaking
yeah.
and when it never has before, right? So unfortunately, and I think that's kind of what I mean why something needs to happen. I don't know what. I, realistically, I don't really think anything will in that sense.
No.
But and I mean, and let's be real. I'm sure there's a good, probably half of that oil and gas kind of people that still have no problem with fracking.
Oh yeah.
But fracking did get an immediate reaction. I find, or I shouldn't say immediate, but very quick.
Yeah, it was a little more visceral for sure. I think that's what makes climate change such an extra like tougher nut to crack is because it's so gradual. It operates in the realm of averages, right? Like it's the global
Yeah,
average temperature can't go up more than 2 degrees. Well, to the average human that thinks in terms of here and now, 2 degrees doesn't seem like much, but like we just can't comprehend what that means on a global scale. And so even things like storms are just getting slightly more severe each year, but because it's like such a gradual process of getting worse, it's so easy to just kind of rationalize it away in your head as just normal.
mm-hmm.
Like I mean, even just things like our snowstorms are getting crazier, like hailstorms and shit, or like floods. It's like, well, those have always happened, you know. It doesn't matter they're getting more and more frequent, and that when you graph it out and actually, yeah, like do some research,
Right.
like not like a person on the internet looking things up. I'm not calling that research, but like actual scientists like tracking these trends. It's only then with a certain level of understanding of like statistical analysis that you're like, oh shit, things are getting bad. But to the, like your immediate senses, it doesn't feel like things are getting that much worse. And that's what's I think that's the bridge to cross is like translating it from a theoretical abstract emergency to a here and now emergency. Like so many people can't make that jump.
Hmm. And unfortunately, like I just don't see it happening, even in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Like I don't.
Yeah, I
I,
know. It sucks. I like to operate as if I have some hope, but yeah, no.
I've had a conversation recently with someone, and it's just like I think when I don't know when first started developing this mindset of kind of where I'm at now as an adult and my personal views and political views, and I think, and I'm sure everyone goes through this where you first get there and it's like I this needs to happen. Like I can create change. I need to find similar people with my views, and it's going to better the world. But unfortunately, I've gotten to a point in my life where, as much as I have these views and I still push and I still try to get my voice heard, I don't see very many of my views actually coming to fruition and
Oh
actually
no,
changing or doing anything in my lifetime, unfortunately.
no, no. Yeah,
And as much as it's sad, like back to like something having to happen, like it really, we are gonna have to get to where we can't get to a return before anyone's gonna actually commit to saving the planet. And
yeah, for sure.
it's
I
great
mean,
that
yeah,
there's some amazing countries in this world that are doing their part and at least putting a platform to other countries to hopefully follow suit. But the fact of the matter is we've had that shit for years and
mm-hmm.
years. I mean, I know this is completely different, but you look at a country like on like a drug standpoint, you look at a country like Portugal and several other countries that have done that, and yet over in our side of the world, that's absurd. Like
Yeah,
that's absurd, right? So like even on the idea of climate change, there's countries that are leaders in that area, but it doesn't matter. Like there's
yeah,
this like, and I think it's down to a lot of like the nationalism and feeling that your country is better than everyone else, and it doesn't matter what any other country does. Like it really
I know.
doesn't, because for whatever reason, people believe that this flag means fucking something than anyone else's flag, and their opinions matter more,
Yeah, it's pretty fucking absurd.
which I don't understand. Because to me, if we all just worked together, like and understood things together, it would work a hell of a lot easier and a hell of a lot better. Because
Yeah,
and I know that happens. Like I'm not completely,
on some level, but at the end of the day, like all these nation states do have their own interests, and
yeah.
yeah, it sucks. And that's kind of the thing is like it is a global problem, so it's going to require global solutions. But we don't have the only fucking global thing we have is a global market, and that's what got us into the fucking mess. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. It's tough not to get super like down on it because you're right. Like I remember when I became like politically aware too. Yeah, you get this sense of like immediacy, like oh my god, I need to find people and change things now. Oh my god, we need to like build and like I don't know. I had like two reactions to that now. Like you kind of see the lay of the land and you realize how fucking, if not impossible, how much work that will require and how much risk.
Yeah.
And so many of us decide to just not take that risk, and that's kind of why we're where we're at. But also because it does feel like an insurmountable, right? And I think it helps to think of it in two separate ways in the sense that like, well, you can't just go from this to like a global movement. Like it starts local. Everything starts local. And so it's just like you can't kind of come at it with wanting to change the world. You kind of just got to make life better for those around you, you know?
Yeah.
And so like improving your community, and if you have success with that, you can scale that up, and then you'll have communal connections that you can become like a political force together, You really have to kind of start ground up. Even with that in mind, the current terrain looks pretty fucking dire. It looks like things
Yeah.
aren't good, even if we could do that. But that's the thing. That's only the current terrain. Things change all the fucking time. So yeah, it might look hopeless right now, but we don't know what the world's going to look like in a year or two. It's probably going to look worse, but there might be some opportunity within that getting worse to kind of wedge ourselves in there and enact some change. So I don't know. Before I get too like doomer and black pilled and depressed about it, I just try to think, you know what? You just gotta live your fucking life the best you can, help the people around you, and just kind of prepare. Like you're just not like in a crazy doomsday or thing, but just by understanding the world and learning about it, and just like
Yeah.
so that when opportunities arise, you're prepared to take advantage of them, kind of thing. So
Yeah, like dig up your backyards, put in like
yes,
shelter underneath
a
the
bunker,
ground. Like,
start canning.
yeah, no,
No, but just so that if you do have a community organized that actually cares about each other and there's an opportunity to enact some sort of change, you are organized and ready to go. Like,
yeah. You know what's kind of funny? Like on the idea of like comparing these rational views. Um, to someone like a doomsday prepper, I feel like I would judge them less to someone like that's like a climate change denier or
oh,
a flat earther.
100%.
Because like honestly, to me, like that, it makes sense in some
Yeah,
ways.
100%. I get it. The only thing that keeps me from being a doomsday prepper is that I just like, it feels too selfish, you know? Like, it's kind of like,
Yeah,
okay, we're fucked. Fuck everybody. I give
there.
up on everybody else, you know?
Well, and
Like,
there's an element I almost don't care. Like being a doomsday prepper, it's like you seriously think that you're gonna somehow survive for a long
yeah.
time? Like fuck that. I'm
Go
gonna
down to
go
blaze
out
of
with the
glory.
rest. Yeah, like if that's the world, that's the world. Like there's no point in hanging on at that point,
Yeah,
in
and
my
like, yeah,
opinion.
okay, what, you're gonna be alone forever? That sounds great. Like,
Yeah,
fuck,
exactly.
like, why would you not want to like work with people either to stop it or to like help each other survive it? You know, like I don't really get it.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
But yeah, on that note, I guess we'll be back next week with some bunker tips and some how to make your own clothes and
Yeah. Kale's gonna be doing a little canning exercise for
yeah,
us on how to can some chicken and yeah,
canned chicken, gross.
some spam with Cam. There we
Yeah,
go.
spam with
That's
cam.
no, yeah, it's hard to talk about this shit without it getting a little bit depressing, in my opinion, just because it's just like I don't have hope,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But
Yeah, and I've been there too, and I get there, but I try to remember nobody fucking knows anything, man. Like as much as we know things are probably gonna get worse, we don't know
yeah,
how things will change. All we have to hope for is hopefully the first world dies, and then we'll have a
yeah,
chance.
yeah. Well, and I think, I mean, again, I hate when I talk like this because I know people would take it the wrong way. But if there's anything that coronavirus has taught us, it's that the first world doesn't matter. It targeted them just as much as it targeted everyone else, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, us as the first world, right? Like,
Yeah.
if anything, I think the pandemic showed how fucking inept we are.
Oh yeah.
Like, fucking how many countries in Asia are like back to normal, and yeah, we're like still dealing with this shit. People are
Hmm.
still fucking dying in waves. So it's a mix of like, okay, now we know for sure the people in charge of us don't give a fuck about us. I mean, we
Yeah.
already knew that, but now you have like concrete proof. And also, even if they did, because it can affect them, how many of them are dying too? They weren't even able to take care of us or themselves. So it's just like I don't know. It's kind of exposed how fucking inept our leaders are.
Absolutely.
So that kind of gives me hope. Well, it's like, well, fuck. If they can't even handle a crisis, hopefully they just kind of collapse real quick when things get real, and then we'll have a chance of surviving.
Yeah. We can only hope.
Yeah. Yeah, fuck. I think that's a nice place to end it then on a nice depressing doomsday note. But
Yeah. Um. Yeah. No, I think we'll end that here.
I think so. So yeah, don't believe the oil propaganda, especially if you're from Alberta, and start canning.
Question everything.
Yes.
Um. Yeah. Thanks for another episode, folks.
Thanks for tuning in.
We will see you again next week. I don't know what we got planned for next week, but we'll
Yeah, I don't know.
come up with something good, I'm sure. And yeah, check us out on all of our platforms. Be sure to check out the Insta page with all the memes. And we'll see you next week.
Sounds good to me.
See you later, folks.
Take care.